Probably the most common dispute that I see in the probate court is people that are not happy with what they're going to get. And there can be all kinds of reasons why that happens. Sometimes it's in a will, sometimes it's in a trust, sometimes it's just simply there was no planning and that's what the code says. It can be based upon hard feelings. If a person was in need of care before they pass away, and a particular person, a child maybe, was responsible for a lot of that care, and at the end of the day, the will or the trust or the law says they get an equal share with everybody else, it might feel like they're really not getting treated fairly because of all of the extra work and effort and time and resources that were used in order to make that care available. Sometimes it's an issue where it's disproportionate. One person may be getting a much larger share of an estate, and the question is whether or not that was really what mom or dad wanted. Was it the result of somebody influencing unfairly or unduly mom or dad's decision, and maybe taking them to a lawyer and not really giving them the freedom to have a private communication in order to determine what really mom or dad wanted, but having somebody, a child, usually domineering how the conversation goes and making themselves a larger benefactor of the estate. That's a very common thing that we see. Sometimes it's abuse of resources. It may not be that somebody really feels that things were set up unfairly, but there may be somebody who's appointed as a trustee or an administrator of an estate who is recklessly spending money on themselves or their children or their grandchildren or indirectly something that's benefiting them, and there's a dispute over the abuse of that authority and power that's diluting the assets in a way that makes it indirect disposition or distribution that's not fair to everybody. There can be all kinds of things that come up. That bottom line is basically somebody feels that they're getting shortchanged, and the question is whether that's true or not. I'm thinking about something that one of my professors said in law school, and in one of the things he was challenging us as students with at the time was, if you have a client and they feel like there's something unfair that's happened to them or is happening to them, and it may be something unique or unusual, and you really don't know off the top of your head whether it's legal or illegal, chances are, if somebody feels like they're being wronged in some way, is generally true. And you can probably find a rule that will support the contention. People have a basic moral compass that tells us whether things are fair or not. And if somebody feels like something's unfair, then it probably is unfair in some way, and we have to look for the law that supports that. So I kind of always keep that in the back of my mind because every case is very unique. Every case is very different, factually speaking, and a lot of different dynamics in terms of the moving parts and the people and the money and the resources and the assets. So whenever a client feels like there's something unfair that's happening, digging in and finding the truth of that is sometimes a journey, sometimes it's not. But the reality is that we end up in court when people feel like that they are not being treated the way that mom or dad wanted them to be treated. It can sometimes be a challenge to navigate those cases through the court because resources are limited, lawsuits are expensive. Getting information necessary to produce evidence in court is expensive, and it takes a lot of time, not just for lawyers, but for the support system that lawyers in the courts need. So, for example, if we have to hire a court reporter in order to get testimony in a deposition, that's $1,000 or $1,200 a day just to have somebody come in and type up what we've said. And to subpoena a bank to get bank records, that can easily be anywhere from $200 to $1,200 the bank is going to charge to get copies of documents and records. So those things can add up very quickly. Ironically, in terms of trying to resolve those disputes and cases, a lot of times the cost of litigation is effective in terms of helping people come to some middle ground where the case can be solved or at least agreed upon without having to go to trial. I do a fair amount of mediation. We go to a neutral third party, both sides, and we argue our case and we present our evidence. And the mediator will help everybody come to a point where they're able to leave certain things on the table in order to get the things that are most important to them and walk away and hopefully minimize the litigation. One of the things every mediator will tell people is that mediation is successful and a settlement is successful when everybody walks away unhappy about the result. And over the many years that I practiced law, I've really found that to be true. The art of practicing law, whether it's a probate dispute or a trust dispute or a divorce or whatever it is helping people understand the balance between prioritizing those things that are most important to them and fighting for those things, and being willing to walk away from those things that are less important, even though they would be nice to have. Balancing those things so that we're able to leave those things on the table and walk away when it's appropriate so that everybody can move on with their lives. Litigation is very stressful. It's very emotional. It's very hard. There's a financial expense, but there's an emotional expense that goes along with that. It's a real roller coaster ride to go through a lawsuit. There are really positive parts of it for people. There's really negative parts of it for people. There are wins, there are losses. Sometimes it feels overwhelming. Sometimes it feels impenetrable. Can't say that. But at the end of the day, the question is whether or not going through this very difficult process, based upon where we are in the process today, and whether or not we have an opportunity to resolve the case today, is the best course of action. Is it better to go on? Is it better to settle? Is it better to leave some things in order to get some things? That's a dynamic that changes throughout the course of every case. And ultimately, my clients, they have to make that choice. My job is to make a recommendation, talk to them about what the cost is to continue, talk about what's on the table, talk about the probability of success. Ultimately, they have to judge whether it's worth it or not worth it to continue.